Most people fail to gain power not because they lack ambition, but because they cling to morality like a shield, unaware it makes them predictable, controllable, and easily defeated. In this video, we dismantle the illusion that morality elevates you, when in reality, it is the very trap that keeps you beneath those who wield power without hesitation. In every era, the powerful have understood one truth. People are governed not by ideals, but by their weaknesses. Yet the masses still cling to the belief that righteousness guarantees victory. It does not. Morality is a story told to keep you obedient, ashamed of ambition, and fearful of your own potential. Those who rise learn early that power rarely rewards purity. It rewards clarity, decisiveness, and the courage to act beyond the boundaries others worship. So in this exploration, we strip away the comforting illusions and reveal what truly governs human behavior: fear, desire, self-interest, and strategic deception. Ask yourself before we begin, do you want to be remembered for your virtues or for your influence? Morality, for all its poetic charm, has always served the same ancient purpose: to keep the many obedient while the few rule unchallenged. If you observe history not as a believer in noble tales, but as an analyst of human motives, you will see that every moral code emerges from those who wish to restrain others, never themselves. This is the first and most uncomfortable truth you must confront if you intend to understand the machinery of power. Morality is not a universal compass. It is a leash designed by those strong enough to convince others to wear it. Consider the rulers of old. They spoke endlessly of virtue, piety, honor, and duty, yet behind palace walls they plotted betrayals, negotiated assassinations, and secured alliances through fear rather than love. Why did they preach one thing and practice another? Because they knew something the common man did not. People are far easier to control when they believe compliance is a moral necessity rather than a political convenience. A moral command feels righteous to obey. A political command feels oppressive. And so, rulers disguised one as the other. Now ask yourself, how many times in your own life have you been guided by rules that benefited someone else more than you? Perhaps you were told to be patient, be forgiving, be the bigger person, while the very individuals urging these virtues took advantage of your restraint. They appeared noble, yet they reaped the rewards of your hesitation. This is not an accident. This is a psychological strategy as old as kingship. Convince others that self-protection is selfish, and you will never face resistance from them again. The powerful understand an essential mechanism of the human mind. Once a person internalizes a moral rule, they police themselves. They hesitate, they doubt. They justify remaining small because they believe growth would violate some higher principle. Think about how efficient this is for anyone seeking dominance. Why expend effort suppressing others when they can be persuaded to suppress themselves? Why confront rebellion directly when you can convince people that rebellion is wrong? Religion, governments, empires, and even modern corporate cultures have all mastered this technique. When ancient rulers claimed divine authority, they were not simply projecting spiritual beliefs, they were crafting a moral boundary that placed them above criticism. Questioning them became a sin, not a strategy. Similarly, corporations today speak of loyalty, team spirit, and sacrifice, not out of affection for their employees, but because a morally loyal worker is easier to exploit than a strategically aware one. You see the pattern, don't you? But let us go deeper. Humans crave belonging, admiration, and meaning. Morality provides all three. It offers the illusion that suffering with dignity is more honorable than succeeding with strategy. It rewards compliance with social approval. It frames ambition as dangerous and self-interest as shameful. And because people fear judgment more than defeat, they align themselves with moral narratives, even when those narratives weaken them. This is why those who pursue power quietly step outside moral boundaries long before they rise. They understand that morality is not eliminated. It is repurposed. They do not reject it publicly, they wield it strategically. They adopt moral language to calm the masses, while they themselves operate with calculated freedom. Their actions appear bold, almost reckless, Yet they are guided by an internal logic that prioritizes outcomes over appearances. They know that to obey morality blindly is to surrender agency. Ask yourself, then, if morality is a tool, are you the one using it, or the one being used by it? When someone urges you to do the right thing, is the right thing truly aligned with your interests, or does it merely serve theirs? Do you hold your sense of virtue, or does your sense of virtue hold you hostage? The tragedy is that most people never question the origin of the rules they follow. They inherit them, wear them proudly, and wonder why power always gravitates toward those who refuse to be constrained by the same doctrines. They fail to see that morality functions like a beautifully decorated cage, comfortable, familiar, but still a cage. To rise above this, you must learn to see morality not as a divine command, but as a political instrument. You must learn when to appear moral and when to quietly step beyond its limitations. And if this unsettles you, good. It means the conditioning is beginning to crack. A predictable person is a powerless person, and morality creates the most predictable pattern of all. When someone acts from rigid virtue, their decisions become transparent long before they make them. Their hesitation, their guilt, their desire to appear good. These reveal their moves more clearly than spoken words ever could. History is filled with rulers who exploited this weakness in the virtuous. They understood, if you can anticipate a person's response, you already own the outcome of every conflict with them. Predictability becomes a silent surrender. It hands your opponent a map to your intentions before the battle even begins. Consider the loyal minister who clings to righteousness while serving a cunning prince. He speaks of honor, yet his master reads every hesitation in his eyes. The minister refuses deception, therefore his reactions are fixed. He cannot lie. He cannot feign ignorance. He cannot act unexpectedly, and so he becomes harmless. You see this same pattern today. The colleague who insists on always being transparent is the easiest to outmaneuver. The friend who prides themselves on never breaking promises is effortless to manipulate. Their virtue does not make them admirable. It makes them predictable, and predictability in power dynamics is a fatal weakness. But let us go deeper. A predictable person is not merely easy to control. They reveal their psychological structure to anyone observing them closely. You can anticipate not only their next action, but the emotional script that drives it. Their fear of judgment, their craving for approval, their need to be seen as good. And once you know someone's emotional script, you can write the outcome of every interaction before it begins. This is why manipulators target the morally rigid first. The rigid rely on principle, not strategy. They follow rules even when those rules disadvantage them. They signal their choices before they act on them. Think of the general who marches exactly where the enemy expects. His troops may be loyal, his armor polished, his intentions noble, but he is doomed. Predictability turns strength into liability. The enemy positions their forces effortlessly because they already know where he will hesitate and where he will advance. The same principle governs human relationships. If a person can predict that you will always forgive, they will test you. If they know you will always explain yourself, they will corner you. If they know you avoid conflict, they will pressure you. Your patterns become pathways for others to exploit. This is why those who cling to moral purity often become emotional puppets in the hands of colder minds. Their reactions are bound by the need to be seen as good. They fear appearing harsh. They fear disappointing others. They fear the discomfort of being judged, and fear makes them readable. To be unreadable is to be untouchable. But to be consistent in virtue is to be transparent. If your enemy can sketch your behavior with accuracy, they can control you without ever raising their voice. They simply place you in situations where your morals dictate your choices, and you respond exactly as expected. So the question becomes unavoidable. Do you wish to be morally impressive or strategically invisible? Because you cannot be both. The more you cling to righteousness, the more legible you become. And those who seek power study legibility the way a hunter studies footprints. It reveals the prey's direction before the chase begins. But understand, this clearly unpredictability does not mean chaos. It means freedom from psychological chains. It means responding with strategy rather than reflex. When you break the pattern others expect from you, you reclaim the power they once held over your mind. And in that moment, you stop being an open book and become a closed fortress. But here is the irony that should disturb you. The most predictable people believe they are strong because they are principled. They think consistency is a virtue. They think restraint is noble. They think being easily read is the same as being trustworthy. Yet these beliefs are precisely what make them vulnerable. The world does not reward the transparent. It rewards those who move with quiet calculation, revealing nothing they do not choose to reveal. Next, we expose purity's hidden cost. The greatest illusion in the pursuit of power is the belief that moral superiority protects you. It does not. It blinds you. It comforts you. And worst of all, it convinces you that your virtue is a shield, when in reality it is nothing more than a beautifully polished weakness. People cling to the moral high ground because it feels elevated, righteous, untouchable. Yet history shows that those who stood upon it were often the first to fall. Consider the fall of the Roman Republic. Senators proclaimed themselves defenders of virtue, while men like Caesar, who understood human nature far better than they understood their own laws, rose effortlessly. The senators believed their moral stance made their cause invincible. They believed the public would rally to their purity. Instead, the public followed the man who offered stability and power, not moral posturing. Their illusion of righteousness clouded their strategy, and their strategy cost them everything. Ask yourself, how many times have you believed that being right would ensure victory? How many times have you thought your integrity guaranteed respect, that your honesty guaranteed fairness, that your good intentions guaranteed good outcomes? And how many times did reality prove otherwise? This is the silent cruelty of moral illusions. They promise certainty in a world built on unpredictability. They promise protection in a world governed by dominance and desire. The moral high ground is attractive because it feels like a throne. But thrones carved from ideals crumble faster than thrones carved from fear, loyalty, or necessity. When you stand too high, you cannot see the hands working in the shadows beneath you. While you proclaim your purity, others are quietly positioning themselves where your guard is weakest. Morality becomes a fog, and inside that fog, the ruthless move freely. Let me give you a modern example. In workplaces, the employee who insists on always doing what's right often believes this grants them immunity. They think transparency will be rewarded, that honesty will protect them from politics. Yet those who maneuver behind the scenes, subtly aligning with power, strategically withholding truth, controlling perceptions rather than confessing them, rise faster. The honest one believes their moral purity shields them, but it merely exposes them. They become predictable, passive, and easy to undermine. Why does this happen? Because morality convinces people that the world operates on fairness. But fairness is a construct, not a condition. Power rewards effectiveness, not innocence. Influence rewards perception, not purity. The world does not bend to the righteous. It bends to the strategic, and those blinded by moral illusions fail to recognize how deeply human beings are driven by self-interest, fear, admiration, and survival. Morality, when wielded without strategy, is a veil that hides the true forces moving beneath human behavior. Think of medieval kings who invoked divine moral authority. They did not cling to morality. They crafted it. They used moral narratives as weapons, as shields, as tools. Their subjects, believing in the righteousness of their rulers, obeyed willingly. The kings controlled the illusion. They did not become slaves to it. They preached virtue while practicing pragmatism. This is the difference between power and naivety. Those who wield morality intentionally rise. Those who worship morality blindly fall. So let me ask you directly, when you cling to your moral purity, are you protecting yourself, or are you merely comforting yourself? Does your righteousness give you leverage, or does it simply make you feel superior? Feeling superior accomplishes nothing in the realm of power. Being effective does. And effectiveness requires seeing the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. Moral illusions distort perception. They make you assume the best in enemies and the worst in strategies that could benefit you. They make you believe that choosing the right option ensures a right outcome. But the world does not reward the right choice, it rewards the effective one. Virtue without strength is decoration. Virtue without strategy is surrender. If you wish to hold power, you must learn to step outside the illusions that comfort the weak. You must recognize that morality is not armor. It is a story, and stories can deceive more effectively than lies. Power has never bowed to the virtuous. It has always bent toward the strategic, toward those who act with clarity, precision, and a willingness to do what others hesitate to even imagine. Virtue may earn admiration, but strategy earns obedience, and in any hierarchy, obedience outweighs admiration 1,000 times over. Look across history and you will see the same pattern repeating, almost like a law of nature. The virtuous dream of shaping the world through ideals. The strategic reshape it through action. The virtuous wait for the right moment. The strategic create it. And while the virtuous hope to be rewarded, the strategic impose their reward on the world around them. Consider the rise of the Medici in Florence. They were not the most moral family, not even close. But they were decisive, calculating, unburdened by the paralysis that grips those who fear moral judgment. Their rivals clung to noble traditions, believing virtue alone could secure influence. Yet it was the Medici who built banks, forged alliances, manipulated perception, and pulled the strings of politics with quiet precision. Florence remembered them not for their piety, but for the empire they constructed from shadows. Ask yourself, do people in your life reward you because you are good, or because you are useful? Do they trust you because of your honesty, or because of your consistency? Do they follow you because you are virtuous, or because you understand what they want and give it to them strategically? Power flows toward those who understand human nature, not those who cling to moral fantasies about it. Humans respond to incentives, pressure, fear, admiration, opportunity, and image. A strategic mind recognizes this and shapes reality accordingly. A moral idealist ignores it and hopes the world will magically honor their goodness. Hope is not a strategy, and in the arena of power, it is a liability. Let us examine why decisiveness outperforms virtue every time. The virtuous person hesitates. They question themselves. They seek approval. They fear consequences. They want their intentions to be understood. Meanwhile, the strategic actor cuts through the moment like a blade. They do not explain. They execute. They do not seek permission. They move. Their clarity becomes a force, one others instinctively respond to. Even in simple social dynamics, you have seen this. The person who hesitates loses the argument to the one who speaks firmly. The harder worker loses the promotion to the one who understands timing, alliances, and visibility. The kind friend loses influence to the charismatic strategist who knows how to steer group dynamics subtly, without ever announcing their intent. This is not injustice. It is human psychology. People follow certainty, not purity. They follow direction, not virtue. They follow the individuals who appear to know what must be done, even if those individuals are flawed, controversial, or morally questionable. Think of leaders who shaped nations. Were they the gentlest, the most honest, the purest? Rarely. But they were decisive. They projected vision. They embraced necessity. And necessity, not righteousness, is what changes the fate of peoples. But the mistake many make is assuming strategy requires cruelty. It does not. Strategy requires clarity. It requires seeing circumstances without distortion. It requires acting according to cause and effect, not emotion and ego. In fact, some of the most effective strategic minds in history avoided unnecessary brutality because it wasted energy and created instability. Precision is not chaos. It is control, and control is what virtue alone can never grant you. Virtue without strategy is a candle in a storm, beautiful but doomed. Strategy without virtue is a cold machine, effective but feared. Power comes from blending both, but only one of them must dominate, and that one is strategy, because strategy determines action, while virtue determines justification. Strategy moves the world. Virtue explains it. So ask yourself one more uncomfortable question when you imagine your future. Do you see yourself being rewarded for your moral goodness, or do you see yourself rising because you finally learned to act with precision? Because power will not bend to your purity, it will bend to your decisiveness. Controlled amorality is not the abandonment of principles, it is the mastery of them. It is the ability to step beyond the boundaries that restrain the average person while maintaining the inner discipline that prevents you from dissolving into chaos. Most people assume that once you leave the realm of rigid morality, you become dangerous in a reckless, self-destructive way. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. The most effective individuals throughout history operated outside moral rules with extraordinary restraint. They were not wild. They were not impulsive. They were precise. Controlled immorality is the art of acting without permission, without guilt, and without the illusions that confuse the weak. It is the ability to evaluate a situation based not on what should be done, but on what must be done. And this distinction is what separates the powerful from the powerless. Consider the lion. It is feared not because it attacks everything, but because it chooses exactly when to strike. Its power lies in restraint, not savagery. The same principle applies to human influence. To operate beyond moral rules is not to lash out blindly, but to act with cold calculation in select moments when others would be paralyzed by ethics. The most successful rulers understood this. They maintained an appearance of virtue while reserving the right to bypass virtue entirely when survival demanded it. They kept their hands clean in public and their decisions sharp in private. They practiced deception with the same calm intention as a surgeon uses a knife, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Ask yourself this: how many times have you avoided taking action because you feared being judged? How many opportunities have passed because you clung to an image of purity that benefited others more than it benefited you? Controlled amorality frees you from this paralysis. It allows you to move strategically in situations where morality is merely a story others use to protect their interests. But let us be clear, controlled amorality does not celebrate cruelty. Cruelty is the tool of amateurs. It reveals insecurity, not intelligence. True power comes from subtlety, from knowing when to bend the rules, when to break them, and when to pretend they matter. It comes from understanding that morality is flexible, not fixed, and that you can operate outside its boundaries without losing your core identity. Think of the diplomat who negotiates peace while secretly ensuring his nation gains advantage. He lies with purpose. He withholds truth not to harm, but to secure survival. He acts in the gray while appearing luminous. His immorality is not reckless, it is measured. It is a form of control over both his own impulses and the expectations of those around him. Or consider the modern leader who fires a loyal employee, not out of cruelty, but because the survival of the organization demands it. To outsiders, it may appear harsh, but controlled amorality understands that emotional attachment cannot cloud judgment. In the realm of consequence, sentiment is a luxury few can afford. Controlled amorality is also psychological. It requires the ability to silence the internal voices conditioned by society, voices that insist you must always be kind, compliant, predictable. These voices were never designed to make you powerful. They were designed to make you manageable. When you learn to quiet them, you reclaim control over your choices. But this liberation comes with responsibility. Without discipline, stepping outside moral boundaries becomes destructive. Without clarity, it becomes corruption. This is why so few can practice controlled amorality effectively. It demands intelligence, emotional regulation, and the ability to foresee consequences long before they unfold. You must be both detached and observant, both flexible and firm. Ask yourself, what would your life look like if you were not limited by unnecessary guilt? What decisions would you make if you evaluated them purely through strategy, rather than through fear of moral judgment? What opportunities would suddenly become accessible if you allowed yourself to act with calculated neutrality instead of blind virtue. The uncomfortable truth is that those who rise do not ask whether an action is morally pure. They ask whether it serves their objective, whether it protects their position, whether it strengthens their influence. They move within morality when it benefits them, and beyond morality when it restricts them. Controlled amorality is the middle path between naivety and corruption. It is the mindset of individuals who refuse to be shackled by rules they did not create yet refuse to become the monsters others fear. The mind unburdened by moral expectation moves through the world with a clarity the average person will never know. When you are no longer chained to guilt, hesitation, or the fear of appearing ruthless, your thoughts become sharper, your actions faster, and your perception far more accurate. Most people wander through life carrying the weight of what they believe they should be, rather than making use of what they truly are. And this burden, disguised as virtue, slows them until they can be overtaken by anyone who moves without it. Think of generals who entered battle not with trembling conscience, but with focused purpose. They understood that hesitation kills more soldiers than enemy blades. Caesar crossed the Rubicon not because he was morally certain, but because he was mentally unburdened. He acted before his doubts could weaken him. And history rewarded him not for righteousness, but for clarity. Ask yourself, how many times has guilt made you hesitate? How many opportunities have slipped away because you spent more time worrying about what others might think than about what you needed to do? This is the cost of the burdened mind. It second guesses, it apologizes, it seeks approval. And approval seeking is the quickest way to become controlled by others. The unburdened mind sees the world as it is. It recognizes that people follow power more reliably than they follow morality. It understands that influence requires movement, not contemplation. When you are free from the inner noise that demands purity, you can finally listen to the signals that actually matter. Ambition, timing, human nature. Imagine entering a negotiation with the quiet confidence of someone who has nothing to justify. You speak less. You observe more. You do not reveal anxiety because you have none. You do not shrink from decisive action because you are not afraid of the moral consequences others invent for themselves. This is the advantage of the unburdened. Most people live in a state of internal conflict. Their instincts pull them one way, their moral conditioning pulls them another, and they spend so long debating between the two that they lose both the moment and the opportunity. Meanwhile, the unburdened mind moves. And movement, when others freeze, is power. Let me give you a psychological truth. Guilt narrows perception. It shifts your focus inward, trapping you in endless self-evaluation. But power requires the opposite. It demands outward focus, awareness of motives, intentions, and vulnerabilities in others. A guilty mind is blind. A clear mind sees everything. Think of the leaders who shaped empires. Whether noble or cunning, their power came from this clarity. Made decisions without drowning in self-doubt. They understood that hesitation creates openings for rivals, and guilt creates openings for manipulators. When you hesitate, someone else advances. When you feel guilty, someone else exploits it. Controlled amorality, which we explored earlier, prepares the ground, but the unburdened mind is the fruit. It is the state in which decisions flow naturally, unclouded by unnecessary moral fog. You do not become reckless, you become precise. You do not become cruel, you become effective. Ask yourself, what would your relationships look like if you approached them without fear of disapproval? What would your goals look like if you pursued them without apologizing for wanting more? What would your future look like if you stopped bending your potential to make others comfortable? The unburdened mind is not ambitious because it is selfish, but because it is free. Free from the narratives that keep the masses obedient, free from the internal saboteurs that whisper you must be good before you are strong, free from the need to justify your actions to people who have neither your vision nor your responsibility. This freedom creates an aura. People sense it. They are drawn to it. They trust those who move with certainty because certainty is rare. Most live wrapped in layers of self-doubt, moral confusion, and emotional dependence. But when they encounter someone who is mentally unburdened, they feel something ancient: respect, fear, admiration, or obedience. The unburdened mind is the silent advantage of the powerful. It turns obstacles into choices, opponents into opportunities, threats into calculations. It operates without apology and without delusion. But here is the truth that others will never tell you: to maintain such clarity, you must also understand the hidden costs of stepping outside morality, because even the unburdened mind must navigate the consequences of its freedom. And in the next segment, we confront the final question every strategist must answer: what price are you truly willing to pay for power? In the end, the truth is simple. Control rarely looks like control. It looks like understanding. It looks like patience. It looks like you letting others believe every step they take was their own idea. The most effective power is the kind no one notices until it is too late to resist. You guide, you direct. You plant thoughts like seeds in dry soil, and watch them bloom into decisions others swear were born from their own will. Ask yourself, how many victories have you won in silence? How many outcomes have you shaped without raising your voice, your hand, or your image? And more importantly, how many could you claim if you mastered these principles fully? Remember this: the world is not ruled by force. It is ruled by influence disguised as innocence. If this message struck you, leave your thoughts below. Share your experiences, your victories, your failures. Subscribe for more strategies drawn from the cold mechanics of human nature. And share this video with those who believe they are impossible to manipulate. Let them prove you right.